Welcome back. So right now when we start our application, it's actually going to be blank, meaning that the tables are going to be there, but there's not going to be any data in there. So before we start doing the read by ID and read all, I just want to seed my database with a little bit of data. So what I'm going to do this lesson is we're going to add seeding to our system, meaning that when I run and create the database down here, when I do the ensure created, it'll actually go and create some data as well. So I don't only get the database up and running with the right schema, I also insert a couple of videos and a couple of genres in my system. Now the way we do it is we go back to the DB context right here. We're going to override a method in here. We'll just keep the DB sets as they are, and then we'll say override. And this is a pretty cool thing, a pretty cool feature, because when you write override, you can actually see everything you can override in DB context. And as I scroll down here, you'll see there's one called on model creation right here. It's one of the few protected overrides. I'll take that one and I'll just press enter and get it in here. Now, in order to start adding data to my database when I launch the application, I can do model builder dot. I can say what entity do I want to add data to, or what table do I want to add data to. And in my case, let's start with the genre entity right here. That's the table, and I can say has data, and I can pass in a new genre entity, actually even a list if I wanted to, but let's just keep it simple and now just create a couple of genre entities right here. We'll make the first one. Now notice when you're doing it like this, you have to put in an ID. It doesn't auto create an ID for you. So I'll put in an ID and I'll give it a name of horror. That'll be one of the genres I have in my system. And I'll actually just copy this line and make another one called horror like this. There we have two. The next one will just be comedy instead, and we'll call this ID 2. And let's actually make one more, and that's going to be, no, actually two more. The first one is going to be my video genre. Here we go. And let's just make another video entity, not video genre. I don't know what I'm talking about. So the second one is also going to be a video entity. It's going to be instead a new video entity right here. We'll make this into a video entity as well, and then we'll just start populating this with all the data we need. So first of all, it doesn't have a name, it'll have a title. So let's call it Horror Days. It's just a title right here, and it'll have a release date. Let's just take date time now to just get going, and we'll have a storyline. Let's say, yay, that's the storyline. And the final thing is a genre ID. So we'll put in the genre entity ID and we'll pick genre entity ID 1. So this is a horror movie, right? And now let's just do this in a couple of lines so you guys can see all this. Let's write Comedy Days instead. Great movie, by the way. Comedy Days. It's going to have the same release date. It's going to say yippee instead right here, and it's going to be genre 2 because it's a comedy. So now we have, when we start the application, now there should actually be inserted two different genres and two different videos. So let's try and restart. Now that is very helpful when you do development, because now I can easily try my get by ID, and I can easily try the different get all and everything in the next lesson. So try and check this out. You can actually even see the inserts right here. We're going to insert into genres. We're going to insert both the value of 1 for the ID and horror, and another genre is the value 2 and comedy. And here you can even see it's going to add the values 1 and 1. So 1 for the ID and 1 for the genre entity ID. We have the release date and the storyline. You can see all of this, and it's going to be written as stored procedures, so it's not easy to do dependency injection, SQL injection later on, but we'll talk about that later. So that means that now my database actually contains some data already. So as the final thing before I end this, let me try and show you this in Data Grip. Now we'll talk more about Data Grip later, but it's pretty much just a simple way for us to actually view our data in the database, and it's also a JetBrains tool, so I will talk a little bit about it later on. Let's try and see. We have our video application. Let's try and expand that one. Under the schemas, we have two different pre-made tables right here, and let's just edit the data for one of them, and let's just refresh to make it update, and there we go. Now we have two genres, and if we do the same for this guy, we'll edit the data. Let's just refresh, and you'll see we also have two horror movies right here, one for horror and one for comedy, and they actually point to the different genre IDs. So that's it for this lesson. Now you've actually seen how easy it is to seed your database in order to have some data when we start the application, and that's very powerful because then we don't have to do the post request every time in order to get started. So that's it for this lesson. See you next time. Bye.